Right, Liverpool, Manchester United and Manchester City have all slipped down the rankings in the latest Deloitte Football Money League as clubs from continental Europe gained a bit of ground.
Yeah, the Money League looks at revenue figures reported in clubs' annual accounts for last season. And the Assistant Director of Deloitte's Sports Business Group, Zal Udwadia, joins us now to explain the figures a little bit more. Zal, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I suppose the big question is just why have these European clubs gained on the Premier League teams?
Well, if you look at the top 20 Money League clubs, you've still got 8 Premier League clubs in the top 20. And if you actually expand the rankings to the top 30, you've got 14 Premier League clubs in there. That's nearly 3/4 of the Premier League amongst the highest revenue-generating clubs in the world. So the Premier League is still really in a dominant position in global football. You have a couple of less clubs in the top 20 this time because for clubs ranked between 11th to 20th, they're so dependent on on-pitch performance, and you had some really strong performances from clubs across Italy and Frankfurt, for example, that knocked a few Premier League clubs outside the top 20.
Just let's focus on Liverpool for a second. They've had the biggest fall of any club in the top 20. They've gone from 3rd down to 7th. Why do you think that was?
So Liverpool's drop is really driven by on-pitch performance, and that's had a really big impact on some of the broadcast revenues they were able to achieve this year, and that's impacted their decline.
Manchester City, they've been knocked off that top spot by Real Madrid despite winning the treble last season. Is that something of a surprise? Like, say, Liverpool's drop has been slightly down to on-pitch performances, so the opposite, it must be true for Man City.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really close at the top this year. Real Madrid have had a remarkable growth. They've had a huge increase in attendances, big growth in commercial revenues, particularly from record merchandising, both in-store and online. And that's really helped Madrid pip City to the top.
What about their rivals in Manchester? Manchester United, they dropped a place, but a healthier revenue figure than the season before. And I was Sir Jim Ratcliffe's firm, Ineos, buying a 25% stake in the club. Could we see them climb the table, do we think, in the next few years?
Yes, certainly. If on-pitch performance comes back to what it was historically, they certainly can. But I think for all Money League clubs, it's going to be the club's ability to diversify their business models and focus on more commercially driven business models to really help them gain a greater control over a larger proportion of their revenue. That'll help solidify clubs' performance and their rankings in the top 20 going forward.
Tottenham now find themselves as the highest ranked London club. Why do you think that is? Because it's not all down to football alone, is it?
That's right. So Tottenham and a number of Money League clubs are undergoing a huge wave of investment into stadia, for example, because really they want to flip these valuable assets that are only used 25 days in the year to really high-tech, multi-purpose entertainment venues that can start bringing in a whole host of new revenue streams from concerts and events and new partnerships. And there's this wave of investment into stadia that's going to drive growth going forwards.
West Ham have dropped a few places. They're down to 18th, I think, a place behind Newcastle, who are 17th. But West Ham's revenue was down on the year before, despite winning the Europa Conference League. So what's behind that?
I think for West Ham, again, it was some of those other European clubs that had really exceptional seasons that were able to climb above West Ham in the rankings. And that's why West Ham are slightly lower.
It's interesting as well, isn't it, when you look at the Women's Money League table. Barcelona sit top, Manchester United in second, so they're the highest ranked British club. But is that perhaps surprising, considering clubs like Chelsea and Arsenal had better seasons? And how do things differ a little bit when it comes to the Women's Money League?
Absolutely. So the women's football clubs they have such a different business model compared to the men's. Each club is so unique in the way they approach their business model. But for the women's league, it's going to be their ability to attract sponsorship that are exclusive to the men's games that will really help drive growth going forward. The women's game is on a huge growth trajectory. I think average revenues increased by over 60% this year. So it's just not quite fair to compare them to the men's at this stage, but there's huge growth potential in the women's game at the moment.
OK, Zal, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a bit of an insight into those results. We really appreciate it.